Hey, welcome NFL football fans. It's that time again, time for another edition of NFL Football Talk. I'm your host, Charles E. Smith Jr. This is an Inside Sports production presented by Humanican Media and available on Podbean. If you happen to be on your mobile device, you might want to go ahead and download that. And you can follow us every single week. We're all the way up to week 15 of the NFL season. And, only two teams have clinched, so let me go ahead and congratulate the great state of Pennsylvania, the Steelers at 11-2, and the Philadelphia Eagles at 11-2, the only two teams to have clinched playoff berths at this point. Everything else is sort of up in the air. So, of course, a little bit of sorrow there in Philly with the whole thing with Carson Wentz. But we'll go ahead and get into that in just a moment. As you know, I do not work alone here. I do enlist the help of only the very, very best. So here's the man that many of you already follow on Twitter. And if not, you should be. It's at Chris L Sports. That's at CHRIS, the letter L, and then Sports. He's a proud graduate of Rutgers University, and he is my favorite East Coast intellectual from somewhere in an undisclosed location somewhere in Southern California. Here he is, Chris Lardieri. Chris, what's happening, man?
Charles, thanks again. Appreciate the intro as always. Looks like the NFL has come back to life. I mean, really an exciting weekend of football and a lot of playoff implications and great endings. And, of course, the obligatory December blizzard game, right?
Yeah. That Buffalo game was fantastic. I don't know what the weather's going to be like for them in Miami this week. I don't know if they got another snowstorm coming through, but that should be epic as well. But, hey, Aaron Rodgers is coming back this week, so they got a big game. The Packers still hanging on to playoff life. They got a big game against Carolina this week. And, we got to give condolences to a few teams here. First three teams in the AFC, and that's the Cleveland Browns, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Denver Broncos officially mathematically eliminated for playoff competition. And then in the NFC, New York Giants, San Francisco 49ers, the Chicago Bears, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Washington Redskins. You can start making your travel plans for right after Week 17, and then enjoy the offseason. We'll see what the new season brings.
Yeah, and in the case of a Giants fan like yours truly, you could have made those plans in October. But regardless, I think now those teams' fans will start looking to the NFL draft, although the 49ers really, with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, have turned things around. And if anything, they're playing their way out of a top 5 pick. But at the same time, it appears they've found their quarterback of the future in the process. I guess that's a trade-off.
Yeah, that's true. The Niners, resurgent Niners, have won 3 of their last 4 games. So we'll see what happens there. Now, one team was the Washington Redskins, came into the season with some little bit of promise. A lot of people thought they might make some noise. They might not. We don't know what the quotient is with Kirk Cousins, but between injuries and just a series of unfortunate events, I think it all kind of capitulated in Week 11 with that bad loss to the New Orleans Saints, and the Skins really hadn't been the same since, and now they're out of playoff competition.
Yeah, and you have to wonder, too, how much more time does Cousins and head coach Jay Gruden have in D.C.? I'm sure Cousins, he's been franchised twice. I highly doubt he wants to stay with a team that's really in transition at best. And Gruden had a lot of time there, but I'm sure he's gonna rise to the at or near the top of the coaching hot seat this offseason.
Well, I don't know. It's one of those things though. They have so many injuries this year that can you really put anything on Gruden? That's the big question.
My thing is, even when they didn't, I think they were a mediocre team at best. I think you got to look at what happened last year when they had the Giants in town last week of the season. All they had to do was win, and they're in the playoffs. The Giants had nothing to play for, and they completely outplayed the team. And we know how impatient Dan Snyder is, so that's what I'm factoring into account here.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so, hey, a lot of teams, though, if we look at everyone who's in playoff competition or playoff consideration, like I said, the Steelers 11-2 leading the AFC North, Patriots 10-3 leading the AFC East, Jacksonville at 9-4 leading the AFC South, and then Kansas City at 7-6 leading the AFC West, and that's going to be a huge game they got coming up with the Chargers this week. And probably the winner of that is going to more than likely win the division, I think. but there's still a few games left. So we're going to get into all the real playoff mathematical equations next week, because right now it's just too crazy.
Yeah, it's nebulous at best, but it is nice to see that we have a Saturday night game that is really worth watching with the Chargers and the Chiefs. My son, the resident football expert in the house, reminded me this time last year we had Dolphins Jets to look forward to, so a marked improvement year over year.
Yeah, and you know what? I wasn't even looking forward to that Dolphins Jets game. Here I am in my Dolphins gear, but hey, I'm a realist about what the team does, even though they got that big win on Monday night over the Patriots, who did not have Gronk. But then again, hey, remember, they didn't have Gronk for the Super Bowl, and Atlanta wasn't able to beat them. So maybe this was a big accomplishment for the Dolphins winning on Monday night.
Yeah, you got to hand it to Jay Cutler. He showed up and played in prime time. So got your use out of him for his new contract, right?
Yep, absolutely true. So, as we get into it here, we got the NFL news. We also have our picks of the week 7. We picked 5 of the more intriguing matchups. Give you our picks on that. Then we have our fantasy football advice. We also have our Gambler's Delight special. But before we get into that, always like to give Mr. Lardieri the floor. Always has some great wisdom to share with all the football-loving public out of there. Mr. Lardieri, what you got for us today?
Yeah, a couple of things. Us here in Southern California, we've got 2 NFL teams now, and both of them are in the thick of the playoff hunt. Mm-hmm. Although part of me, the skeptic in me, wonders, at least for the Chargers, does anyone seem to care? With the Rams, there was a great crowd at the Coliseum, but then it came out that Fox had their pregame show there, and a la ESPN's College Game Day. They wanted a big crowd in the background, but knowing I guess the demographics of the LA football fan, they actually put out a casting call and offered free tickets. So in typical LA fashion, there's a lot of skeptics out there, but we'll leave it to Fox to do that. And then also, too, as we had mentioned, really a great slate of games, and a couple of things that always seem to come back to haunt us. How about the terrible refereeing is back, especially in that Rams-Eagles game? Questionable call on a field goal with Aaron Donald, and then Trumaine Johnson getting a taunting penalty that I don't know about you. I really didn't see. I mean, Mike Pereira was baffled by the field goal penalty, and at one point he was the NFL officiating czar. So good to see that coming back again. Really hope the referees don't have too much of a say in any sort of a game that has playoff implications, but real head scratcher there, to say the least, in that game.
Yeah, that's true. And one thing with the Rams, I like the way that they played this year. I mean, a record of 9-4. They're leading the NFC West. But one thing is, if they're going to be ready for prime time, they got to start winning some of these big time games. I mean, of their 4 losses, they lost to Washington in week 2. But other than that, losses to Minnesota, losses to Seattle, they've lost to Philadelphia. So they need to beat those types of teams if they're going to get to the big dance. So I'm really kind of concerned about the Rams and their ability to really play in prime time.
Definitely, and this week will tell if they are that prime time team. Going up to Seattle, a difficult place to play, but at the same time, this could help them control their fate in the NFC West. So I think this could make or break them here this week.
Yeah, there we go. So fantastic games coming up. So let's go ahead and shall we get right into it, folks? The picks of the week, 5 of the more intriguing matchups. Mr. Lardieri, why don't you go ahead and kick us off with one of those great Saturday night matchups?
Yeah, the Chargers go into Arrowhead, AFC West potential leader and or locking up a playoff berth at some point on the line here. The Chargers really, since going into the Meadowlands and beating up on a pathetic Giants team, have turned their season around. They started 0-4. I think they were also the last 0-4 franchise to make it to the playoffs in '92. Under Bobby Ross. Really a great story. And the Chiefs, which look like we're all but left for dead. There's a Kareem Hunt sighting. Alex Smith actually threw the ball. The defense showed up this week. So really, for me, a hard game to forecast. They played earlier this year. I believe it was week 2 or 3, and Kareem Hunt had a field day, and the Chargers are definitely not the same team. I think this is going to be a close, hard-fought game like these two teams always seem to play, especially late in the year. I'm going to go with the Chiefs for no other reason other than it's a home night game, and being middle age and watching a lot of these AFC West battles, I know the struggles the Chargers have in Arrowhead, whether they're a San Diego or an LA franchise. And I think, too, the fact that the Chiefs woke up and realized they could control the ball, if they could get Hunt and Charcandrick West running that clock down and keeping Phillip Rivers off the field. I think that will help. Chargers have a formidable defense. Really, their pass rush has been excellent this year. Joey Bosa kind of flying under the radar as one of the top defensive ends in the NFL. So I think if you're the Chiefs, you don't want to throw too much with those guys coming down at you. So that's a recipe I have for success. Who the heck knows if my prediction will be right?
Well, the game does have the Chargers as only a 1-point favorite at this point. So definitely it's going to be a close game. And yeah, that was a week 3 matchup, and Kansas City beat them. They won the game 24-10. But now the Chargers have won 4 straight games. I look at KC, and they beat the Raiders last week, but the Raiders they're the Raiders. The Raiders showed signs of life there for a couple of weeks. Then last week they went back to the same stuff. Predictable offense. There's no creativity whatsoever. Lining up and trying to beat DBs one-on-one, just nothing, just very vanilla. But I think that with the Chargers, I think they're feeling it now. 4 wins in a row. I think they go up there. The Chiefs, I'm not sure they're really doing anything that much differently. So I'm going to say that last week for the Chiefs was just kind of a hiccup, but the good kind. And this week we're going to see which way these teams are both going. And I see teams headed in opposite directions still, regardless of what the Chiefs did last week. So I'm going to go ahead and go Chargers in this one.
Yeah, you know what? If they do, I'll give you props because let's face it, the Chargers have been on a nice winning streak. But if you look at the numbers and the stats, they haven't beaten anyone that difficult, and they beat a Bills team with Nathan Peterman, no relation to Peterman of Seinfeld fame. But we'll see. We'll see if they're men or boys after this week. That much we'll know late Saturday night.
Right, and as you say, they haven't beaten anyone really good, but to me, the Chiefs are not really a good team. So there you go.
Hey, they've got at least they've got a winning record. Beating up on the Browns and Redskins isn't that impressive?
All right, so let's go ahead to the next game, and this is kind of a fun game to pick here. My Miami Dolphins in Buffalo, which we don't know if it's going to be a driving snowstorm or not. Dolphins at 6-7, Buffalo at 7-6. Buffalo actually, if the season were to end today, which it's not, Buffalo would be taking a wild card spot. So a lot of playoff implications here. Buffalo really needs this game. But Miami, I like the way that they played on Monday night, and Buffalo just had a ton of trouble there with Indianapolis. 2 teams that are, mediocre seasons, but I'm going to say it comes down to a little bit of defense, the run game. I'm going to say that I like Miami's defense a little bit better here. So I'm going to go ahead and say the Dolphins build on what they did on Monday night and take down Buffalo in the cold, even though I know Miami's a warm weather team and we know how that works out. But I'm going to go ahead and take Miami here in a low scoring, hard fought, kind of an ugly game.
I agree with the latter part of your prognostication, but I'm going to pick the Bills. While I am very impressed with the way the Dolphins beat the Patriots last night, fact of the matter is Belichick's 1-4 in Miami, his last 5 tries down there in South Beach. I also think the fact that there's this glimmer of hope for the Bills in the playoff race. I think I don't even know who's going to be quarterback for the Bills, but I do know this: the Dolphins are going to see a lot of Shady McCoy, and they're going to run that ball. And if it is cold, they'll play old school Bills football, control the clock, let the defense win the game for them. And at the end of the day, I don't trust Jay Cutler, and I especially don't trust him in the cold in northern New York. So going to go with the Bills.
Cutler played all those years in Chicago. He should be used to playing in the cold, but I know exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. We know he's a little soft. Nothing personal against your Dolphins, whether it's cold, warm, high altitude, sea level. Doesn't matter. He's Jay Cutler. You never know what you're going to get.
There you go. So go ahead and break down the next one for us, man.
The Tennessee Titans, who somehow are in the playoff race in the AFC South, and even if the Jaguars do pass them for the division title, they've got a lot of wild card hopes riding on this game. They go into the Bay Area. I won't say San Francisco because it's really not, but they'll play the 49ers at Levi's Stadium. Really a great story, the 49ers, the way they've seemed in the last few weeks to be revitalized with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback. I don't like the way the Titans are playing. If Mariota is indeed going to play, it looks like he's banged up and hurt. If he's hurt, well, who's left? Matt Castle? I mean, that doesn't leave me very optimistic. So I think a Mariota on one good leg is probably your likely option. That said, I just like the momentum of the 49ers. I like the way Garoppolo has been throwing the ball. Marquise Goodwin's clearly become his favorite target. This is a young, hungry team. Going to get a little bit ahead of myself here, but they kind of remind me of what the Rams did. I could see this team making a turnaround next year, playing a last-place schedule, but having the young pieces in place to turn their year around in 2018, and they're going to build on that momentum and beat the Titans, I predict.
Okay, and you know what? I'm going to go ahead and roll with you here because I see the Titans, and there's also a lot of questions as far as the coaching staff and things like that in Tennessee. So they're having kind of a mini meltdown, I would say. I wouldn't say a complete implosion like you see happen with some franchises, but Tennessee is going through a rough patch right now. I don't like the confidence level. And, yeah, I like the Niners, who have won 3 of the last 4 games. But, yeah, playing in front of the home crowd, I'm going to go ahead with you here. Niners all the way.
Good we agree again. Welcome back.
All right. And next game, as I talked about those Los Angeles Rams, who 9-4 record leading the NFC West, and this is a big division matchup in the toughest place to play possibly in the NFL, facing the 12th man up there in Seattle against the Seahawks. Seahawks at 8-5, big playoff implications here. Seahawks dropped that game to Jacksonville last week. As you know, the Rams lost to the Eagles. So this is a game that both these teams need. Obviously, Seattle needs a little more, but the Rams, they've got to prove they're ready for big-time football. The Rams, they're going to go in there, and I think they get the job done this time because it's now or never for the Rams. They've got to prove they can beat the elite teams, and especially their division rival. They really should have beaten the Seahawks in L.A. earlier in the season. They didn't get it done. They got to go up there, handle business. I'm taking the Rams to beat Seattle this week.
I'm going to agree with you. I look at the performance Russell Wilson put on last week in Jacksonville, and while it was impressive, I mean, the guy's ultimately a one-man show. He loves throwing the deep ball. It's hit or miss, but he had a couple costly picks, and there's only so much Russell Wilson can do. What concerns me is the defensive side of the ball. I think that secondary, especially missing Sherman and having injuries throughout the year, I just don't feel like teams are as intimidated by them. I mean, look, Blake Bortles threw the ball on them last week. Jared Goff could easily duplicate that, if not do better. I think the Rams really had a chance to beat the Seahawks earlier this year in October, and it was a hard-fought defensive struggle, but I think they're going to learn from their mistakes. Gurley really looks like a man on the mission this year. I think he'll be key in this game, not just running the ball. If Goff needs to dump the ball off out of the backfield, that could really present problems for the Seahawks. And getting back to what we said, the Rams control their own fate, and we'll see if they are men or boys here. And I think they get the job done. You know, they've come in previous years and gone into Seattle and won, so I wouldn't be surprised if it happens again.
Yeah, that's true. And looking at the injury to Carson Wentz, you know, he's going to be out for at least for about a year with that ACL injury that he suffered last week. So the Rams, if they could sneak up here and maybe take advantage and get one of those get a first-round bye, that would help them out a lot. Like I said, you're going to have to run the gauntlet in the NFC, and you do not want to have to play an extra game. So they can start by going all out right here and, end the season strong and wind up getting a first-round bye. That would help out the, young QB especially, and a younger head coach, I guess. But the Rams need this game. I like them playing them, and it's going to be one of the games of the week. And maybe the best game of the week, except for the one that Mr. Lardieri is going to break down next.
Absolutely. The rematch of last year's AFC Championship. The Patriots go into Heinz Field to face the Steelers. The Patriots 3-point favorites. Yes, you're reading that correctly. Look, everyone's been looking forward to this game. CBS refused to let NBC flex this, I'm sure. So luckily we get it in the late window for Jim Nantz and Tony Romo. All signs point to an epic battle. Looking at this game initially, I thought, wow, the Patriots had one of those games where they got caught looking ahead to the Steelers, and they're going to rebound, they're going to rally and go into Pittsburgh. And when I think about it, I think the differentiating factor between these two teams, look, you've got great legendary quarterbacks on both sides of the ball, offensive weapons, defenses, while they are not as imposing as they used to be, they've been getting the job done this year. I think what the difference is Le'Veon Bell. Last year he went out in that AFC Championship game. With the way he's playing, I think the Patriots are going to have to account for him, and I don't think they could do it. That said, I wouldn't be surprised if the the Patriots pulled it out, but I like the way, it's going to sound silly, I like the way Chris Boswell's kicking. He won another game for them on Sunday night against the Ravens, and if it comes down to it, I could see him pushing one through late in the game. Steelers win. Hopefully this will be a kind of the hint of things to come, and we see them rematch again in yet another AFC championship. But I will go on record and say I think it'll be more high scoring than people anticipate. Their defenses have shown holes the last few weeks.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and the one thing that really concerns me with the Steelers, though, is that with Ryan Shazier being out, and with Gronk, Gronk can come across the middle there, and who's really going to cover him? So with Gronk coming back, it's going to present problems for the Steelers. But the Steelers, I look at it's the same thing as the Rams. If you're going to play big time football, which the Steelers, Ben's been to 3 Super Bowls. They've been in this position before. They need to win games like this at home. They've got to do it. So I'm going Steelers here. They got to take this game. This will basically lock up a home field advantage throughout the AFC playoffs for them. So, it's going to be a great game, and I'm going to go ahead and go with Steelers.
Bravo.
Okay, there you go. That's our picks of the week, everybody. And now will bring in the next segment, one of our favorites, and it's really kind of fun here. If you happen to be in Vegas, you got $20 burning a hole in your pocket, you see the sports book, you got to go over and place a football bet. Everybody knows it because, of course, it's legal to gamble there in Nevada. So we got a Gambler's Delight pick. It may be an over-under, maybe a spread pick, maybe an underdog. We don't know yet. But I go every week. Chris goes every week. Mr. Lardieri, you're the Jersey guy, so everybody expects you to be good at this, which you very well are. So let's hear it.
I haven't been living up to my Jersey reputation of late. Another bad last week. Thanks for nothing, Raiders. But I digress here. So looking at the lines, it's getting a little bit harder. It looks like the bookmakers have gotten a little more efficient with their pricing per se. Initially, I looked at the Packers with Aaron Rodgers potentially coming back, and at one point they were 6.5 point underdogs of Carolina. As we came on the air tonight for the show, Rodgers is back. It looks like one of the books in Vegas has moved that line down to 3. So right there, Aaron Rodgers single-handedly moves the line 3 points. Got to stay away from that because I don't know if I like that as much. But as we mentioned, the Steelers getting 3 at home. I love underdogs. I love underdogs at home, especially when they're good teams, and I think the Steelers have an advantage there. If they do lose, you know me, I like getting the points. If they lose by 1 or 2, at least cover your bet. In this case, I do think the Steelers will win, but I think this is more an overreaction to previous history and the fact that the Patriots, frankly, put up a dud Monday night in Miami, but I like the Steelers here. I mean, it's going to be very rare you see the Steelers getting points. Take them.
Okay, there you go. And what I'm going to do is we talked about one of the resurgent teams that won 3 of their last 4 games. I'm liking San Francisco. Go ahead, take San Francisco, give those 2 points that you're going to need to give to Tennessee. San Francisco's on a roll, 2 teams headed in opposite directions. So go ahead, take the Niners, and unlike last week when I said to play the under with the Steelers and Baltimore, somehow they put up, 74 points between them, I think. Hopefully you'll be thanking me this coming Tuesday.
Maybe you meant first half under. I can't remember.
Yeah. I was watching in horror, even though it was a great game. And that's the bad thing about, what I say about gambling on sports is when you play the under is watching them slowly creep up to that number, but then again, there's some of you who played the over on that Buffalo and Indianapolis game, and pretty much you probably tore up your slip there in the first quarter. So, hey, you know what? That's why they call it gambling.
Absolutely.
Okay, there you go. There's our Gambler's Delight picks. Chris says to go with the Steelers. I'm saying to go ahead and take the Niners and give the 2 points against Tennessee. So now let's go ahead and get into the fantasy football segment here. Mr. Lardieri, many years of experience, expert fantasy football advice. You have the floor.
Thank you. Hopefully my advice paid off for you and you're playing in your potentially semifinals this weekend of the fantasy football playoffs like I am. Couple things to keep in mind here. I want you to play matchups. The Saints play the Jets with potentially Bryce Petty at quarterback. jump all over the Saints defense if they're out there on waivers. Look at the Ravens are playing the lowly Browns. If there's anyone left on the Ravens offensive team that's in free agency, go grab those guys. Even if the Ravens defense is out there, it might be unlikely, but you never know. People fall asleep at the wheel of these things sometimes. Go over that. And also too, like, you don't want to get ahead of yourself, but keep an eye. If you do manage to win this week, look at those Week 16 matchups. There are some intriguing ones. In terms of free agents to pick up this week, look, I've been beating the Jimmy Garoppolo drum. I'm proud to say I'm going to start him this week. Hopefully he comes through for me and leads my team to victory. Kind of tangential to that, Marquise Goodwin. We mentioned him a few weeks ago. He is Garoppolo's favorite target. The guy's put up solid numbers here in the second half of the year. Go get him against a Tennessee defense that has been giving up a lot of points to fantasy quarterbacks. You're going to think I'm crazy for this. There's been a Nick Foles sighting back with the Eagles. I don't think he's going to lead them to the promised land. However, the good news for him is they're playing the Giants this week, a team that can't even tackle and doesn't seem to care despite who the coach is. I'd pick him up. If you've got Carson Wentz or you need someone to stream this week, you could do a lot worse than Nick Foles. And let's face it, he didn't look fantastic in kind of short duty against the Rams, but he did throw a touchdown. So hopefully he helps you out. As we mentioned earlier, if Joe Flacco's out there, go grab him. He's really kind of rebounded in the last few weeks, and he should absolutely feast on the Browns. Running back, Rod Smith, not the old Denver Broncos wide receiver, but a running back for the Dallas Cowboys. Put us some nice numbers against the Giants. He's going up against a porous Oakland defense this week. If he's out there and you need someone to plug in at the running back position, go grab him. And then finally, you need a tight end. Look, Zach Ertz was out. I highly recommend you go get Trey Burton. He did well against the Rams. And at the very least, you cover your assets if Ertz can't go again this week, or if you just need a tight end to stream. I think he's a good play. And then D.D. Westbrook down in Jacksonville. Blake Bortles has actually started throwing touchdown passes, and it looks like he likes targeting Westbrook. I think he's a good sleeper at the wide receiver position. Again, good luck. Hopefully you win, and we're talking next week about your championship game.
Okay, well, you know what? Great advice there, and always love it with the fantasy football advice. And people, here we bring you the very best. And like I said, I would not present Chris as an expert if he did not know what he's talking about. He knows what he's talking about. Follow him. Get the pen and paper handy. If you need be, go ahead and rewind the podcast, listen to it all over. But trust me, you get that advice, and you're going to do well in your fantasy football pools there. So, I got one question for you, Chris. Not necessarily fantasy, but just in general. The Cleveland Browns sitting at 0-13. They got games left against Baltimore, and then they finish up at Chicago and at Pittsburgh. 0-16, are they going to do it? Are they going to pull it off?
It's a very real possibility, but if they do win, I would think the game to circle would be the Bears. You're not sure what you get week to week from that team, and there are rumors coming out of Chicago that John Fox might be working on borrowed time, but I think it's a very real possibility. And then that said, they fired Sashi Brown, the GM. Are they just going to do another house cleaning there? It's kind of like every few years. I mean, my kid said to me, Dad, why are the Browns so bad? And I really didn't have a good answer for him. It doesn't matter who owns them, who runs them, who coaches them. I mean, they just continue to make blunders. I don't know if they've got a gray cloud over their head, but they are the epitome of just a losing, terrible NFL franchise. And they're going to probably end up with the top pick again, but what are they going to do? I mean, do you even take a quarterback? They need so many pieces, and they whiffed on so many quarterbacks. I mean, it's really, if you're a Browns fan, I got to give you credit. You are loyal with a capital L.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's really ironic that the banner behind you fell down right when you started talking about the Cleveland Browns. That's just, you can't even plan it any better than that.
No, I didn't. There was no staging there done whatsoever. No wardrobe malfunction, nothing.
Okay, everybody. So remember, every single week through the NFL season, I'm Charles E. Smith Jr. That is Chris Lardieri. The show is NFL Football Talk, Inside Sports Production, presented by Humanica Media, available on Podbean. Follow me on Twitter at The Inside Sports, or follow Chris on Twitter at Chris L Sports. That's at CHRIS. The letter L, and then sports. So for Mr. Chris Lardieri, this is Charles E. Smith Jr. Thank you for joining us. We'll see everyone next week. Enjoy this terrific week of games, and we'll see everybody for Week 16 breakdown.